Good evening, Sun Valley. It's great to see you all this evening. Very thankful for another opportunity to be able to present this lesson to you all. The title of this lesson this evening is How Do I Treat My Neighbor? I remember a story from my friend's mother who passed away from an aggressive cancer in 2019. And I remember going to her funeral, and like Peggy's, it was sad, but it was also encouraging to see how many people and lives she touched while she was here. I remember her oldest son gave the eulogy. She has 3 sons, and they all played baseball. That's important to the story. But the oldest son was given the eulogy, and when he got up there, he was kind of shocked and sad and happy, and his eyes were filled with tears, and he says, "I'm sorry, I just heard a story about my mom that I didn't hear until today." And his father and his other brothers didn't know this story until someone had told them at that funeral that day. The story goes like this. Like I said, her 3 sons played baseball, and she was volunteering at a table, I guess, or a booth where people would come and they sign up for the cleats and the jerseys and whatnot. And this kid and his mother came, and the mother had told my friend's mother that he was not going to play baseball that year because they could not afford cleats, and they just didn't have enough money to pay that. So that day, she went out, she bought the kid cleats, she came back, she met with the mother and the kid, handed them the cleats, and he was able to play baseball that year. I use this story because it's appropriate to see how someone treats someone else, how to show love, how to show compassion to someone else. It's important to reflect on what type of Christians we are. And it's important to reflect on how we choose to treat others. The lawyer in this scenario that we're going to be reading in Luke chapter 10 asked Jesus this important question that maybe we've asked ourselves, which is, who is our neighbors? Who is our neighbors, and who do we classify as our neighbors? There is a struggle, not just outside of the church, but even within our own brotherhood, with how we treat each other. But there's also a problem from Christians on how we treat non-Christians as well. But Luke discusses these characters in this parable and the way that they acted. But I think this idea is not original with me. It's one of my instructors presented this idea to the class, and I asked him, and I said, "Can I use this for a lesson?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And so he said, "Who do you associate yourself with in this parable? Do you associate yourself with the lawyer, with the one that's always picking fights, with the one that's always trying to show that he is the best, that he is the smartest, and that he knows more than you do? You associate yourself with the thieves, always finding a victim to exploit, always finding that one vulnerable person to expose. Do you associate yourself with the priest and the Levite, that you're too high up there, that those who need help are beneath you? You don't want to help them. They are a nuisance to avoid. Are you the innkeeper? You simply just have a job to do, and that's what you're doing. Or do you associate yourself with the Samaritan, who sees, acts, and executes? How we treat a person affects our hope. So the first person I want to look at this evening is the lawyer. If you would, turn your Bibles to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10, and we'll start in verse 25. Luke chapter 10, and we'll start in verse 25. And it says, "And the lawyer stood up and put him to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, What is written in the law, how does it read to you? And he answered, You shall love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. But wishing to justify himself, he said to Jesus, And who is my neighbor? You see, the lawyer is attempting to test Jesus. This was not a matter of, Jesus, let me learn from you. It's a matter of, Jesus, let me show you you're wrong. But Jesus counters that he, being a lawyer, should know the law and what is written. And the lawyer repeats the law, and he answers correctly. But he was trying to justify himself, trying to vindicate himself, and show that he could trap Jesus and show how smart he actually is. Here's a man that is picking an unnecessary fight with Jesus. This happens when people decide to debate with each other. They have a certain topic and they begin to fight. And sometimes it can get out of hand where both sides are actually yelling at each other because one person wants to be right and one person wants to show how smart he is. And pretty soon, nobody's making sense. They're mainly just insulting each other. But doesn't this happen even within some Bible studies? When you're studying with someone and they have a question and you want to show them that their question was just ridiculous, that you are right, and you say, whatever you're asking, it doesn't matter. You're wrong. Doesn't this happen even with some Christians? Debating topics that don't even matter, that don't even have a salvation issue. It's just nitpicking and making sure that they know that they are right and you are wrong. There's a problem to discuss, and I want to be right. Pride and stubbornness get in the way. You think about those lawyers in the courtroom, and one that is defending the whatever the term is, and then the other one is defeating the other one, right? And you see these lawyers that they're trying to make sure that they win. And they will use any tactic to make sure that they win. And when that lawyer wins the fight, they're, look at that, I'm smart. I won. I outsmarted you. What about athletes who have a chip on their shoulder and don't think they need to practice? They just think that if they show up to the game, that they'll be fine. That they're going to win no matter what. That nobody is at their level. They don't need to practice. Christians debating a topic that has nothing to do with salvation, but someone wants to be right. Are we guilty of this? Guilty of always picking a fight and trying to outsmart someone else? You think about these topics and these decisions that we make, and we are picking those fights. What is that going to cause? Animosity. It may cause division. People may not want to come back here because all we're doing is picking fights just to show them that they're wrong. And every time they come here, they're going to say, I don't want to go in that. I don't want to be around those people. All they're going to think is that I'm wrong. If we act as the lawyer, our hope is affected. Jesus did not come to win arguments, but to save souls. But maybe we think there is a better way than the way that Jesus did it. So we pick fights to win arguments, to persuade someone to look another way, or to show them that we have knowledge. We know what we're talking about. If we are the lawyer, we suffer from pride and stubbornness. This affects the way that we treat our neighbor. The next person I want to look at is the thieves, or the thief, that I put up there, but it should be thieves. In Luke chapter 10 and verse 30, it says, Jesus replied and said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among robbers. And they stripped him and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. The thieves, they saw a victim and took advantage of the opportunity. They stripped him and they beat him and they left him half dead. It's scary and sad, but there are some Christians who fall into this category, and even towards their own brothers and sisters. Being in this category of the thief is taking advantage of someone, being two-faced. You know, we have these situations where people will come to you and they'll come confide in you, and then they'll start talking bad about somebody else, about a brother or sister, and saying, man, can you believe them? These people are horrible. I don't even want to be around them. And then that person comes and you are all nice to them. You say, man, I think of the world of you. I think you're great. I think you're spectacular. And then that person leaves and you turn right back around and talk bad about them. Pretending to maybe obtain something in return. This is definitely some examples we can find in the Bible. Remember Delilah, when all she wanted was to get money. And so she used Samson and his ability, and to make sure that he was able to get that ability taken away from him. Well, maybe if I just show Samson that I love him, I can get this thing taken away from him. I can get his strength away from him. And she'll come back when Samson lied to her, and she would say, I thought you loved me. If you loved me, you would tell me what was your strength. What's the source of your strength? And Samson gave that away. But it wasn't because she loved him. It was because she loved the money. You think about Ananias and Sapphira, who lied about how much they were receiving and how much they were giving. You think about Elisha's servant taking advantage of Naaman. When Naaman was healed, and his servant went out after Naaman and said, you know what? Elisha was just joking. He wants all of those things that you were offering. Even in modern times, how many people do we know that take advantage of people? You think about those managers of those actors and singers that take advantage of that money. There was a story that I read recently, or not recently, but maybe last year, about Elvis Presley and his manager, and how much of the percentage that he chose to have so that he can go gamble with that money. He made sure that Elvis was at this specific place and performing at this specific place so that he can gain those rewards. What about those bosses that take advantage of their employees? I have personal experience about that. I have personal experience of a boss telling me that, hey, I need your help, but I'm not going to pay you for overtime. I'm not going to clock you in, but I need your help. I need you to stay and help. What about those Christians taking advantage of their own brothers and sisters for their own personal gain? If we treat our neighbor as a thief, robbing and taking advantage of them in their most vulnerable moments to exploit them, then our view of God is low. As a matter of fact, we don't know God. If we take advantage of someone, then we dismiss the command that was given earlier in this section. Love your neighbor as yourself. If we are not loving, then we hate our brother. Flip over with me real quick to 1 John chapter 3. 1 John chapter 3. We'll start in verse 11. 1 John chapter 3, and starting in verse 11. For this is the message which you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Not as Cain, who was of the evil one and slew his brother. And for what reason did he slay him? Because his deeds were evil and his brothers were righteous. So we have this instance that John is telling us that if you do not love your brother, you hate him. As a matter of fact, if you don't love your brother, then you're a murderer. Ooh. If you don't love your brother, then you are like Cain, who was of the evil one. How we treat our brother and sister shows how we view God and his commands. The next group of people I want to look at is the priest and the Levite. Go back to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10. We'll start in verse 32. Verse 31. And by chance, a priest was going down on that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Verse 32, likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him pass by on the other side. The priest and the Levite, they saw a helpless man on the road, and they both passed by on the other side. This man became a nuisance to avoid to them. How many times do we see someone in need and who's on the side of the road? I remember for one of my birthdays, I believe I was turning 18, and one of the things that was on my bucket list was to go see the Rocky statue. And so my parents took me to go to Philly, and we were driving down the road, and on the side here was a bunch of tents, just spread out everywhere. And my dad looks out the window and he says, wow, is there a carnival going on over there or something going on, an event or something? And my mom says, no, those are homeless people. The amount of people that you saw, the whole field covered with people in need. How many people you think go over there and see if they need anything? How many times when you drive down the road or on the freeway or when you're going to work or going to get a coffee, do you see somebody on the side of the road with their hood open trying to work their car? How many of us actually stop to help them? How many of us see if maybe we have jumper cables that we can give them a start? How many of us maybe stop and see if they need food or if they need something? Maybe they ran out of gas. Maybe we go and get gas for them. How many of us actually stop to see what they need? What about an accident that you see that happens right in front of your face? What about people who don't have enough money to buy food for themselves or for their family? What about Christians who need help because of difficulties happening in their life? I mean, we have this bulletin that has everybody who is sick and who needs help. How many of us actually take a second to look and see who actually needs help and what I could do to help my brother and sister? Do we pass by? Do we see a need and do we attempt to fill that need? There was a movie a long time ago, kids movie called Robots, right? And they had a quote in there that was common, and it said, see a need, fill a need. Why are we hesitant to help someone when we see them struggling? I mean, the way life is I can't be late to church. I can't be late. I hate being late. Maybe I have to teach. Maybe I have an assignment to do. I can't be late. That person, maybe someone will be there to help them, but I can't do it. They have people there. I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure someone else will help them. I don't think I'm the best person to help them, so hopefully someone will stop and help them. Maybe I'm just too busy and I just can't stop. I have places to be. In this context, maybe someone will see them helping and see that this priest or this Levite is helping a non-Jew, so they're not going to stop. They don't want to be looked at differently. We miss the opportunity to evangelize through meeting the needs of others and showing them the same love that God has shown to us. If we fall into this category of being a priest or being a Levite, I lose sight of what God wants me to do. Do not pass by, but extend a hand. Not avoid, but interact. If we don't love our neighbor, we disobey the very commandment from God. We hate our brother because we won't give our time and our effort to help others in their time of need, especially our own brothers and sisters. Let's look at the innkeeper. In Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 34, and came to him and bandaged up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them, and he put him on his own beast, and brought him into the inn to take care of him. And on the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I return, I will repay you." Although it's not mentioned in much detail about the innkeeper, it is safe to say that the innkeeper was just doing a job. There's an illustration that one of my instructors used to use, and because he comes down 4 times a year, he goes and stays at the Holiday Inn. And he says that if he was just to go there at one time, it would be unlikely that the hotel staff would be like, "Sir, you have been here and staying here for over 20 years. I think today the room is on us. You don't have to pay anything." They're not going to do that. They're going to say, "Where's my money? If you give me my money, you can stay here." There's another trend that's been going on for a while where it's the pay it forward, right? You go through the drive-through line and you pay it forward for the next person so that they don't have to pay their meal. Well, what if the trend starts to follow and this person hears that everyone else in front of them is paying it forward, but the car in front of you doesn't pay it forward, they just pay for their own meal. So when you get there, are they going to say, "Well, this was the trend that was going on. He forgot to pay for you, so here's your food. Go ahead and be on your way"? No, they're going to say, "Where's my money? Pay me the money so you can get your food. If not, you're not going to get your food." This innkeeper was doing a job. She was getting the money, or he or she was getting the money so that this person could stay here. Some people fall into this category in the way that they treat their brother and sister. I'm not going to help someone unless I get something out of it. I'm not going to drive anyone anywhere unless they pay me gas money, because gas is expensive and they're going to need to pay me. I'm not going to help someone move unless they give me food for helping them. I'm not going to help someone by comforting them unless they give me the credit and let everybody know that I was there for them in their time of need. Look at Luke chapter 6. Luke chapter 6 and verse 35. "But love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. And your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he himself is kind to the ungrateful and evil men." In line with the innkeeper, we can be guilty of falling into that trap, of expecting something when I do something nice, of making sure that I am getting something out of it. If we fall into this category of the innkeeper, our hope is affected. If we are always expecting something in return. We are not told to expect anything in return, but to serve and be servants of Christ. Do we fall into this category? The last category I want to look at this evening is the Good Samaritan. In Luke chapter 10, verses 33 to 35, it reads, "But a Samaritan who was on a journey came upon him, and when he saw him, he felt compassion. And he came to him, bandaged up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. And he put him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the next day he took out 2 denarii, and gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him, and whatever more you spend when I return, I will repay you.'" He saw someone in need. He felt compassion. He acted upon his compassion. He used his own animal to carry him. He brought him to a comfortable place, and he paid for everything. The Samaritan saw, he acted, and he executed. This is the category that we should aim for. Going back to 1 John chapter 3. 1 John chapter 3. Again, starting in verse 11. "For this is the message which you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Not as Cain, who was of the evil one, and slew his brother. And for what reason did he slay him? Because his deeds were evil, and his brothers were righteous." And then going down to verse 15. "Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer. And you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him." Loving our brothers and our sisters and loving our neighbor affects our hope. One, it's a command to love one another, but 2 is the Christian thing to do. Our Christian duty to love our brothers and sisters. Our Christian duty to love our neighbor. But we are surrounded by the world and by the amount of the busyness of life, and that we forget the importance of loving our neighbor. We either love our brother or we hate. We either love our brother or we're a murderer. What do we do when we see a brother in need? What do we do when we see a neighbor in need? How we treat our neighbor affects our hope. There are different categories, obviously, that we can fall into. We can fall into the lawyer category, where we're constantly picking fights, constantly trying to win. And that our focus is no longer on saving souls, but winning that fight. But we can win that fight, but lose that soul. We can fall in the category of the thieves and the robbers, that we're constantly trying to find victims to exploit, to expose, to make sure that we can obtain exactly what we want. We can fall in the category of the priests and the Levites, where it is just a nuisance to avoid. I don't have time for this. Someone else will be able to help them. I don't have time for this. We can be like the innkeeper, just a customer to serve. If I serve you, I want something back. Or we can be like the Samaritan, where it's an opportunity to serve. Which category do you fall into? We all strive to live towards the hope and the salvation, but the way we treat our fellow brothers and sisters determines not only our hope, but our faith towards God. How do I treat my neighbor? This evening, if you are a Christian, even if you're not a Christian, these categories are, at least most of them are difficult, especially if you fall into those categories. I myself have been guilty in falling in at least one of these categories. And I'm sure you have too. But there is hope. We learn, we grow from it. But if you're still in one of these categories and you want to fix it, you want to be more Samaritan-like, then if there is a need and you need help from the congregation this morning, let it be known now as we stand and sing.